Hello and welcome to Adrienne Ross Squared, squaring off from A to Z. I gotta have a conversation today. So you guys are going to get to hear me rant about something. I know that there are going to be some people who would say it's not really a big deal. Other people who will say, I'm feeling you. I know exactly where you're coming from. Others might be going, you're talking about that again. Yes, I'm talking about that again. So what is that? That is commitment. It's commitment. So those of you who are subscribers or even members of the other channel, the main channel, the Adrienne Ross Show, you hear me sometimes talk about the transfer portal. Those of you who are not at all into sports, that terminology doesn't mean anything to you. You've never heard me talk about this. Don't go anywhere because it's a bigger picture that I'm painting here than about sports. It really is. And I think that's why this issue matters to me. And I'm so put off by the transfer portal. So for those of you who are not aware of it, let me just give it to you in technical terms so that I don't just have to explain it. I can read it to those who don't know what is the transfer portal. So I just typed it into Google. I'm just going to read what it says. It says the NCAA transfer portal is an online database where student athletes who are interested in transferring to another college or university can list their name and contact information, making it easier for coaches and schools to find and recruit them. That's just it in a nutshell. So kid goes to college and they are playing sports. Maybe they likely went on a scholarship and they decide, I don't want to go there. I don't want to stay here. I should say, I'm going to put my name in the transfer portal, this database. And then at that point, people can start floating me offers and I can float around. Now, that's just it in a nutshell. There are rules that have changed, etc. But that's it. Like, I want to transfer. Now, mind you, I've taken the college's money, I've taken the college's resources, but I want to transfer. And maybe I want to transfer again and transfer again. And I think it's so much bigger. I did an article on my Substack called Transfer Portal Does Disservice to Culture and Commitment. This is on my Substack. AdrienneRoss.substack.com is the homepage, and then there's a unique URL for the actual article. For those of you who don't know about my Substack and you're not subscribed, you can check it out. There are various subscription options, and also here's the voiceover. This is not a free. There are different subscription options like free and paid and yearly and monthly or whatever. And this one is a paid one, but you would be able to see a portion of it until you run into the paywall. But in any case, I talked about this, just service to culture and commitment. And I really believe that. I believe that parents raise their children to be people who honor their word. So what do you say, Adrienne? Nobody should ever be able to transfer from a school? No, you guys have heard me say this before. I've said it in videos before over on the main channel. I've said it in live streams on the main channel. And so I'll say it again here. There are extenuating circumstances where people would transfer, whether athletes or just students. Those things happen. I believe that should be the exception and not the rule. I think you go into a school, and now we're talking, especially with athletics, you go into a school, you make a commitment. Because you made that commitment, the school made some decisions of its own. But now we've got people popping all over the place. Parents raise their children to be people of their word, at least good parents. There are parents who say, no, you made a commitment, Johnny. You made a commitment, Shaniqua. You need to follow out the commitment. Times are going to be tough, but you made a commitment. And I do believe that this thing, it matters in the course of our lives, how that goes. Like, we're trying to train young people. That's what college is supposed to be. I know they get to go there and play sports, But college is supposed to be sort of a training ground. Nowadays, it's more like an indoctrination center. So I don't know if I would want to send my kids to these universities at this point. However, if you choose to send your child to a university, then they should be then there's something to be said for, okay, let us set an example for these young people about what it means to honor your commitment, to recognize that there were sacrifices made, that people poured into you, and that when it gets difficult, I'm not just going to take off and run and go somewhere else. So whether the coach is too hard on me, well, let me go somewhere else. Or whether I didn't get to score as much points as I wanted to, let me go somewhere else. Now, again, there are some circumstances where it's just extenuating, and I get that. That's the exception, but the transfer portal is now the rule. And so by the time the season is over, like as soon as the season is over, let me jump in this transfer portal and let me see what happens. And we're not treating them like students. We're treating them like adults who can just turn and change and switch and all this stuff that I think is harmful to our culture. Also harmful to these schools because, I mean, think about it. Think about a Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark from Iowa decided to stay in Iowa and play basketball right there in her home state. Kicked some serious tail, obviously. Those of you who don't know, you need to be on the main channel because I cover a lot of Caitlin Clark. Just phenomenal, has changed the game of basketball. And part of that is because she said, I am going to stay here and finish what I started. And she could have gone other places. She chose to stay in Iowa. I don't have a problem with people who say, I'm not going to stay in my home state. I'm going to go, whatever. She chose to stay. So she had that fan base right from college, right from when she was a kid, growing up. And then she goes into college and she just sets records, breaks records, people piling into games. She's this huge role model for these people, not just young, but old as well. And then she goes into the WNBA, as we know, and has transformed the WNBA. She brought in those fans from her growing up and her staying all her whole college career in one spot, and they follow her over to the WNBA. Now, granted, she's an incredible basketball player. Not everybody who's done that has that same kind of following. But I'm saying you mix her talent along with her commitment and her loyalty, you're going to have something that's going to grow. And not only that, there were times when I'm sure her coach, Lisa Bluder, had to get on her case. We've heard stories where they've had to try to work with her. So she had to stick it out when she didn't always hear what she wanted to hear. She didn't always have the players around her that she could have had. And she's paying the price to this day with people chattering. We just saw the national championship where UConn won against South Carolina. Paige Beckers got that championship, and she stayed at UConn as well. And I do believe that that's important to UConn folks and to the fan base, probably as she goes into the WNBA. We'll see how all that works. But Caitlin Clark was in a situation where she gets to the Final Four and the championship game 2 years in a row on it with Iowa, with these players on Iowa who came together but were not like five-star athletes. Like, she was able to do that instead of taking the easy way out and say, you know, I'm going to head on out of here and I'm going to go to such and such a place. No, I'm going to stay here. And yes, I do believe loyalty and commitment are important. I believe we see people, as I wrote in my article, we see people who they enter into marriage, and when times get tough, well, let's just do something different. Let's just have the transfer portal of marriage. And I'm not saying that there are not marriages where there are extenuating circumstances where that parting happens. Not saying that. Not saying you should stay where you're being abused. I'm not saying that. I'm saying that we're supposed to be forming our mindsets. Remember, the brain is not even fully formed until the late 20s? Mid to late 20s, the brain is not fully formed. And so we're allowing children to say, yeah, we're going to do something different. And mind you, in this day and age with NIL and all the money and all the notoriety and all the stuff. They're being pulled in so many different directions, and they need people who supposedly have fully developed brains to be the ones to lead and guide and to set standards so that they don't go to the next step. They can't keep a job because every time the boss says something they didn't like, they're out of there, and they don't enter a church. And just because the preacher didn't say their name and didn't say, thank you so much for everything you did last night, and let me do this, or he preached a message that you don't like, and so I got to get up and go, this is an issue. And then we have in the WNBA a player like Marina Mabrey, very good basketball player. But okay, so now I'm in this team, and let me transfer to this team. As soon as I transfer to this team during the season, and maybe there were those extenuating circumstances where she was like, I got to get up out of here. And those of you who follow the WNBA, remember, she was in Chicago. You can almost see why she wanted to get up out of there. Okay, so you got to trade. You requested a trade, you got the trade, and now you're over in Connecticut, and all the other people are now leaving Connecticut. And so now you want to go to the team and say, I request another trade. Girl, you ain't even been here but a few months. No, we made sacrifices for you to come here. Sorry, but you're stuck here. And so now she's learning later in life, it doesn't just work that way. And then people like that start to feel like they're a victim. I'm not saying she said that, but very often I feel like I'm a victim, and they're not hooking me up, and they're not helping me out, and I'm stuck here in this. Listen, we owe it to young folks to set the example. And I know there are going to be people who say, and the reason why I know people are going to say this, hold that thought, because I've talked about these things in videos, and I have people who have left comments. A lot of people agree with me, but there are some who disagree with me. And in live streams, there are some who vehemently disagree with this. I had somebody leave a comment that said, I think we should do as much as we can to let these young people have as much freedom as they possibly can have. That's not how life is supposed to be. That's not how life works. Life is built upon commitment, right? So I've heard people say, well, grown folks, they switch jobs. They're 40-year-olds, they switch jobs. There's a difference between young folks in college and adults. Young folks shouldn't be switching jobs every 2 months, right? So there's that too. But as adults with fully formed brains, and we know where we're going in our career, that's a little different. But a lot of these coaches bounce from team to team also. I still think it's different than young people who are learning and who people have made commitments to and made sacrifices for. And adults, some of them have an issue too. And we end up having these athletes transfer, and then we end up with players like, I'll just say players who then say, specifically men players, and like the NBA, for example, well, I'm just going to take my talents to South Beach. You guys know that's that quote from LeBron James. Let me take my talents to South Beach. And so I'm a Cavalier, and then I'm a Miami Heat, and then I'm a LA Laker, and then now I'm coercing the Lakers to make sure that my son, who's not ready to play in the NBA, let me coerce them and tell them that don't even have to pay me, just do what I asked you to do, because I'm so used to moving parts and manipulations, and let's do something different and change the rules for me, and all these things that I think are harmful. And I find that I believe that the people who tend to disagree with my perspective, many of them, and it's not always the case, but many of them are young people, and they don't get it. And part of it is because their mindset has been shaped by faulty thinking. Yeah, it may sound rough, it may sound tough, but this is what we supposedly teach young people, even in high school. Oh, let me go to the guidance counselor because I got to get out of Miss So-and-so's class. Okay, let's change your schedule. Let's change everybody's schedule because you got to get out of Miss So-and-so's class. Then you got the guidance counselor says, no, I think you're going to be fine right where you are. And again, unless there are extenuating circumstances, in rare occasions, again, okay, but a whole portal designated to moving around. One of the things, I was a huge Kobe fan. I shouldn't say was. I'll always be a huge Kobe fan. Kobe will always be a Laker. Whole career in Los Angeles. Those are the players that people gravitate to and look at as an example because they made a commitment. Now, that's, of course, professional, but they made a commitment and then they stuck with that commitment. Michael Jordan ended up, leaving, coming back, going to the Wizards. Not a sight anybody wanted to see. But he'll always be known as the Chicago Bulls. But I think it would have been cool if he had ended his career having only played for the Chicago Bulls. That's a light example. I mean, it didn't hurt him any, I guess. But you can still see the level of commitment he had. When he got older, he made some other decisions, but his level of commitment was such that he was true to the Bulls. And so, I don't know. The hopping around mindset, let's do something different mindset. I had an argument with my teammate mindset. I mean, we've got a player. I'm going to be doing this on the main channel. Olivia Miles supposedly has now committed to a university. I'm not going to talk about that here because, of course, I want you to go to the main channel and see that video. But I just think loyalty is important. And I think it starts at a very young age, and it shouldn't all fall apart and you get to college and now you just start flopping around like a fish out of water to see the next big deal, the next big crowd, the next NIL deal. I think we're hurting these young people and in the process hurting the culture. I don't know. Those are my thoughts about it. I tend to be very, I think I have wisdom on these things. And I think that sometimes we are so short-sighted. We're just like, well, listen, they should be able to do whatever they want to do. This is their future. This is their present even. And that's the way it's supposed to be. And I'm thinking, you're not looking at the big picture here. We're talking about young people and how we want them to move forward in society and in our culture, because it does matter. Like I said, we get people who cannot handle stress, so they run. They run from their marriages. They run from their churches. They run from their community organizations. They run from their jobs. They just keep running and moving and looking for the next best thing. Well, maybe, just maybe, you are that next best thing for where you are. It's like in the scriptures, right? Esther. Read it. So how do you know Esther if you were not brought to the kingdom for such a time as this? And indeed she was. And those are my thoughts about it. I find it to be, it's not a good thing. It's not a good thing what we're doing a lot with these young people, with NIL and throwing millions of dollars at them. They're students. They're young people. Let's nurture that. And let's be an example of what it is to be rooted and grounded. And unless there are extenuating circumstances, walk it out and be the difference. You're going and running so that you can be a bigger difference somewhere else, or so that you can hide somewhere else, or someone can know your name somewhere, or whatever. Too much with these young people. And I think it's harmful. So those are my thoughts. Okay, let me jump back in here really quickly because I wanted to share this with you. I want to take you to an ESPN article really quickly and show you some numbers going down with the transfer portal. The ESPN.com article is entitled Women's NCAA Basketball Transfer Rankings for 2025 to 26 season. I'm not going to read all of this, but I do want you to see this. It says the women's college basketball transfer portal opened 1 week later than it did last year, but that hasn't curtailed the activity. Since it opened March 24th, more than 1,200 players have entered. Just over 100 have already committed to new schools, but with the portal open for another 3 weeks, much more activity is expected. Listen, March 24th, I'm recording this right now, April 8th. Since March 24th, 1,200 players have entered the portal, and that's just for basketball. Let's continue with this next paragraph. This transfer season has already been more shocking than last. Big names have had 3 years, who have had 3 years as cornerstones of their programs, have thrown their names into the portal. Notre Dame's Olivia Miles, whom I'll be speaking about on the main channel today. Florida State's Tania Latson and Ohio State's Cody McMahon were set to lead their teams for one final push toward championships but are now in position to completely change the landscape for next season. Their decisions will be the next big news in women's college basketball now that UConn has been crowned this year's champion. It says the list will change as more players enter the portal. For now, ESPN ranks the top 25 transfers for 25 through 26. I'm not going to go through all of this, but that's a whole lot of folks, y'all. 1,200. And notice what it said. This has major impact on these universities and these programs. It names these 3 players who were expected to have a final push. You get to the end now of your college career, and you're expected to make this final push towards a championship. And what do? You step away. And what does that do? It says it completely changes the landscape of next season. The decisions you make have an impact on the whole program, on the whole school. So no, I don't think it's a good thing. I just wanted to just point out how this is going. It's not even done yet. 3 more weeks of this, already 1,200. Whew, that's something. I know there are going to be people who disagree because they truly disagree. And then there are some people who disagree because that's just what they do. It doesn't matter if they really agree with you. They're going to disagree with something. But no, for real, if you really have a strong feeling that I'm totally wrong, let me know. But I don't think I am, and I don't think I'll be swayed. But I don't mind listening to what you have to say. I just think I see a bigger picture here, and I think it's an important one. So again, if you have not subscribed to the main channel, the Adrienne Ross Show, please do so. The link to that channel is in the description of this video. And also, if you've not hit the like button or the subscribe button here, then please do so. All right. I look forward to your comments. I will catch you next time, God willing. God bless you abundantly.